Welcome to another week of Case Files
with Kat
and Ashley.
Hello.
It's like reason number 573. I don't want video because, like, when we have our intro music, like, I'm over here dancing and my dance moves are like the equivalent of Night at the Roxbury, you know?
That's I mean, we don't look
like
cool, you
dance
know.
moves.
I bet we could get away with just having the wizard put in the music and, like, we could listen to it before we start recording, and so we can, like,
Get
feel,
our jams out.
yeah, get our wiggles out, as we say.
Yeah, get the wiggles out.
Yeah, all the parents know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Get your wiggles out. Go ahead, get your wiggles out. Wiggle, 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 go. Wiggle, 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 go. Yeah. What's up? What's up?
Not a whole lot. What's up with you?
I mean, we're double fisting.
We are double drinking. I don't even know what I'm drinking. The mango, was it mango?
Oh shit!
Mango rum.
Mango. Oh,
it's like mango rum, but then I also have a blackberry cider that she gave me, and it's like a blackberry dreamsicle when you drink them back to back.
Hold on. It's mango rum cream.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mango rum cream and key lime rum cream, both from Blue Chair Bay Premium Blend.
Which everything
rum.
I've had from them has been so good. But this is the order to do it, guys. You take a sip of the mango cream and then you take a sip of the blackberry cider, and that's just delish.
And I am doing the key lime with a yellow rose smash IPA. Can you mix it? Sure. Let me.
Yes, do another test.
That's a little ASMR for everybody. That was a little sip. I mean, it's not horrible.
I mean, if you drink enough of it, right? Like, it doesn't matter.
No, it adds more citrus to the beer. You know what I mean? Like, is it creamier? Yes, it's a weird cream. It is a weird cream, but it just adds citrus. Yeah. So yeah, it's not so bad.
I'm drinking the Austin East Cider Blackberry Cider, and it's really, I mean,
Austin East Cider Blackberry Cider.
Yeah. I have to be honest, it's pretty good for drinking one and then the other. Anyways, I'm sorry. I just now noticed your Battlestar blanket going on in the background.
That's from The Office. That's an office. That's an office theme. See?
Oh, I see the
Ding and Flicka.
I'm sorry. I am easily distracted, and
Bears
they just have
beats Battlestar Galactica.
This thing is like right behind her. Well, like right in my eye view. Anyways, sorry.
Yeah. And it's got
nothing to do with the show.
Nard dog on there and the whole thing. Yeah, it's all office themed. Mm-hmm. So anyway. What you got?
Well, I guess I'll just
I
guess.
I got nothing to update you on. So
I'm obsessed with the 2020 like true crime docuseries that they do. They're 2020. Like ABC 2020.
I'm thinking the year 2020.
Oh, I'm so sorry. 2020 does true crime. Like like a Dateline. Yeah, it's like their version of a Dateline. And they are really thorough. They are really good. Every clip that I play tonight, because there's like 7 of them, and a good majority of the information comes from this episode, just because it was done so well. Ooh. I watched other episodes on it, read other articles, listened to other podcasts, and the 2020 episode was just very thorough.
It summed it up. Good synopsis.
Yeah, everything has really good parts. They had it all. So anyways, I'll just dive in.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. What's it about? I have no idea.
So tonight I am discussing the very disturbing murder of Sierah Joughim. So
Sierah
Joughim.
Joughim? Like Joem?
Like Joughim. Joughim.
Oof. Okay.
Sierah was born February 11th, 1996, and was 20 at the time of her original disappearance and then murder. She was living in Delta, Ohio, and she disappeared on July 19. She disappeared on July 19th, 2016, and was unfortunately found dead 3 days later. Her parents were Sheila and Tom. At the time of her death, Sierra was enrolled at the University of Toledo's Junior College of Business, and she was studying human resource management. She was interning at her uncle's metal stamping business. So something to understand about this story is that the town that she's living in is a kind of a small town, kind of similar to your story last week, where this kind of thing is not common. And even in the beginning of the episode, they point out to say that evil can live anywhere. It can be your next door neighbor. It could be the neighbor down the street. It could literally be your coworker. It could be your spouse. And that's very true for this episode because this person that we'll get into did not live very far from her.
What's happening under the table? Is Louis getting you? Is
Louis
he
not getting me? I don't know what he's doing. He's just laying here like all peaceful and innocent. Like, why are you looking at me?
He's playing with the cords. Hold on. You keep going. I'm gonna fix it.
So her disappearance left behind really chilling clues discovered in a dark cornfield, and ended up leading the police to what is called the Barn of Horrors, that was owned by a local man with a history of abduction. So
She lived next to something called...
She lived down the street, in the same town.
The Barn of Horrors.
Yes, she lived in the same town. Okay, it's not like it was her next door neighbor, but this town is not very big.
So the chances of there being a barn of horrors is pretty high.
It's probably pretty high if you live in the country. Because this was like there was cornfields, it was like not Houston or Austin. It wasn't like a big city. So we'll talk more about the man and the Barn of Horrors in a little bit. But when you hear about his history, you would wonder to yourself, how the fuck did this happen? Because he should have been in jail. Surprise, surprise. Anyways, the day of her disappearance, she happened to be on summer break from the University of Toledo. She had been spending the whole day with her boyfriend who lived in the same town, Delta, Ohio. They had been out all day hanging out, and she was going home. So she was riding her bicycle home from her boyfriend's house. He had followed her on his motorcycle for part of the trip, and this was at her request. Okay. And then they parted ways a short distance from her home, like a quarter of a mile, I think is what they said. Like, the title of the episode is She Was Almost Home. I think I have the exact distance somewhere else in the story, but I want to say it was it wasn't even a mile from her home. So the two parted ways. She was a short distance from her home.
And she was on a bike?
She was on a bicycle. So John Klinsky, which was her boyfriend, had told ABC News in an interview, he said, "I remember exactly what I said. I kissed her, I told her I loved her, and did text me when she got home. However, as I stated, she never made it home, and that was the last time she was seen alive." So when he did not receive a text message from her, he called her house to see, and her family said she's not here. So after Sierra didn't return home, her family immediately alerted the police. Later that evening, a sheriff's deputy found her purple bicycle in a cornfield just a half a mile away from her home. So the bicycle was literally just sitting, standing with its kickstand. It wasn't knocked over, none of that. It was kind of, when they found it, it was kind of odd. So Megan Roberts,
she wasn't forced off the bicycle, and it wasn't laying on the ground. Like, she got off the bike, put the kickstand down, and something happened. Like, she was helping somebody.
The person sat it back up after they did what they did.
Right.
So Megan Roberts, a special agent with the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, got a call around 1 a.m. in the morning asking her to assist in the processing of the crime scene. So this was already so suspicious from the moment they found her bike that they escalated to a special agent. Okay, they were not fucking around with this. Yay. Like I said, this didn't happen in this town. This was very unusual. So anyways, investigators combed the area and found more clues in the cornfield. They found a screwdriver, men's sunglasses, a sock, a set of fuse boxes, motorcycle tracks, and evidence of a struggle indicated by broken corn stalks, and the corn stalks had streaks of blood on them. Megan, the special agent, was quoted saying, "It made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. You just had this eerie feeling that you knew that this was the abduction site." So authorities kept a tight lid on what they found and blocked the road leading to the site of where her family, blocked the road leading to the site. So her family were kind of left on the edge and wondering what the authorities had discovered, because the authorities really didn't want to release too much so that they, in traditional investigations, they could know, like, are you okay?
Cat was scaring me.
Why?
Just
Jason's in there.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, he was looking at whoever he was looking at, and then he would look at me and look at Jason. I guess that's how he's looking at. That was scary.
Anyway, so again, the police were trying to keep what they found really like just to them, so that when they found whoever did it, you know what I mean? Like they
you don't want to give away too much. Yeah.
Okay, so
you don't want people fake confessing. Yeah.
And so they said, "We're not letting anybody down there," said her mom, Sheila. She told ABC News alls that could say was that they were investigating. So when the FBI alerted the family of the bike's discovery the next morning, they knew something was seriously wrong. The community immediately launched a massive search, walking through miles and miles of cornfields and scanning for any signs of Sierra. So basically they were thinking, well, maybe she got away and she was injured and just in a cornfield somewhere and couldn't find her way out. So that was their hopeful wish, right? So police received a blood-stained motorcycle helmet from a farmer who found it on the side of the road the night Sierra went missing. The farmer brought it to the police the next day when he saw the news of Sierra's disappearance. Based on this evidence, investigators believe someone riding a motorcycle was involved. So
wait, her boyfriend was riding a motorcycle.
So they say they
wait
had
a minute.
To look,
did her boyfriend do it? Oh God.
They say they had to look at Sierra's boyfriend as a potential suspect since he rode a motorcycle and was admittedly the last person to see her alive while riding a motorcycle. So there was a retired Cleveland FBI. Okay, they weren't retired at the time, but they had an FBI agent named Vicki Anderson Gregg. They had the special agent Megan Roberts, and then the police force of this town. So there was a lot of people looking for Sierra. So John, her boyfriend, was very, he cooperated. He didn't hide anything. He drew a map for them from Sierra's, the direction she would have taken from his home to her home and where they parted ways. He consented to searches of his residence, of his motorcycle, of his truck.
What year was this again?
Sorry, I had to go back up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
2016.
Okay, so there could have been door cams and things like that at that point, right?
Not in the middle of a cornfield, though,
Oh, I know. Okay, but to corroborate his driving down a road or something like that. Okay, sorry.
So camera evidence does play a factor later, but not for him. So he was fully do whatever you need to do. Take my blood, take DNA samples, search whatever you need to search. I'll take, he was all on board because he just kept insisting that he loved her so much. They had plans of getting married. They had been together for a really long time. Lots of plans for the future. Even her family said that John took very good care of her and that none of them ever had any suspicion that he was involved at all. None. When the police even mentioned it, they said there's no way. He cares about her way too much. He would not have done this. And so an investigator named Mark Evans was quoted saying, "We weren't able to find anything that put us in the direction that Josh had any involvement. So having cleared her boyfriend, investigators then turned to the likelihood that a stranger may have abducted her on her ride home, and it was most likely a crime of opportunity, not someone that she knew." Searches for Sierra included hundreds of people scattered all over Ohio looking through these cornfields, again, in case she was injured somewhere or someone had dumped her body. An anonymous donor even offered a $100,000 reward for her safe return. So a break in the case came when the investigators were knocking on nearby residents' doors, because they were literally going door to door, asking people, have you seen her? Do you have any information? All of this stuff. And Major Matt Smithmeyer with the Fulton County Sheriff's Office said there were several stops he wanted to make, one of them being the home of a man named James Worley. He was a man who lived on County Road 6, which is the same road that Sierra lived on. Investigators showed up on just a hunch, but to their surprise, they said that James Worley began acting suspiciously and even made self-incriminating statements, placing himself at the scene of the suspected abduction. So I'm going to play one of the clips now.
But he lived on the same road, so that's, was he just saying I was driving down the road? Like if you live on the same street,
so
aren't you
are
always...
you asking the suspicious things he was asking?
Mm-hmm. Or like
he was saying, I didn't kill anyone. I didn't do anything to that girl. I was home.
We didn't ask you about any girls, sir.
I didn't do anything. This kind of stuff. So he initially let police into his home to verify that Sierra wasn't there, and when they didn't find any evidence of anyone else in the home, they went outside to the barn where the barn was, at which point James began to start acting even more suspicious and not wanting the police to search the barn. So I'm about to play.
This is the barn of horrors.
Clips.
Okay, go ahead. All right.
What led investigators to this property?
Major Smithmeyer knew this guy. I remember him saying that this guy was just odd. He was an odd resident, so they sent a team down here to speak with Worley.
Investigators were very suspicious after talking to James Worley.
Mr. Worley makes a statement about how he was riding his motorcycle and his bike is having issues. It sputters out. He goes into a cornfield and he mentions that he lost his helmet, his fuses, his screwdriver, and his sunglasses. I kind of had to stop my jaw from falling. None of that had been released to the media yet.
Our alarms just went berserk. He's placing himself at the scene.
So now investigators want to search his property, and they visit him a second time.
Walked up and knocked on the door. He answered the door, and he appeared to just have gotten out of the shower.
This time he was a little more agitated and nervous. Okay, so you guys got some suspicions for something here. Let's, well, I talked to them about the helmet. What about the helmet? You found a helmet? Yes. Well, bring it on here, because I want my helmet back.
Well, that's why we're here mostly, is because the helmet looks like it might have some blood on it.
No.
We spoke a little bit at the door.
I just like that he was like, no.
But it just it was the sound that went, that made me laugh, because you could just see oh.
So this is the second clip after they came back and wanted to search his property and all of that stuff, and they had the warrant to do so.
And searched the rest of the property.
James Worley's property had a main house, which sat to the left. To the right side was a barn.
Once they got to the barn, Worley didn't want to cooperate anymore. His demeanor changed.
I'm watching Jim, become very nervous, very agitated, and concerned that we were even in the room. He was trying his darndest to get us to move on. Let's get out of here. It's like loving. Come around back.
You just got an eerie feeling about what was in there. The floor had been raked.
What did the rake marks tell you?
Someone's cleaning up. Someone's trying to hide something. You could smell bleach.
This was the entry door to the north part of the barn. The reason we took this for evidence is you could see that the window was spray painted black.
You couldn't see
so
inside?
No one could see into the area.
Someone had really taken the time to conceal whatever was going on in that portion of the barn.
This barn was located the furthest away from the house. It was almost secluded in a way that the people in the home probably couldn't hear much of what was going on in the barn.
So, when the police executed the search warrant and they got into the barn, they found a crate filled with women's lingerie and an empty blood-stained freezer buried underground.
What?
Police also found rope, tape, zip ties, handcuffs, firearms, ammunition, video recording devices, and film. Inside one of his barns on his property, police found what they described as a makeshift dungeon that was hidden behind tall hay bales.
Hold on.
There were restraints attached to the walls and the freezer that had blood inside it. There was also a strong smell of bleach and...
Wait, there were restraints in the freezer that had
on the wall.
On the wall with... Okay.
There was a lot going on in this barn. Police searched his truck and found more zip ties, a ski mask, 2 sets of handcuffs, rope, and tape. And
this reminds me of like Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. You know, like there's that just so. Would you fuck me? I fuck me.
I'm gonna play you how the investigators reacted when they saw this barn because it severely traumatized some of them, kind of like the toy
box. Yes.
So let me see if I have this at the right spot. Yes.
When they enter the barn, it's extremely concerning.
So behind the bales of hay, you find this.
There was so many things there that were just really wrong.
I kind of had to stop my jaw from falling.
It is like a barn of horrors.
In my 29 years in law enforcement, this has been the most disturbing set of evidence that I've ever seen.
The fear, the heartache of knowing she's out there and, you know, is she scared? Is she hurt?
You just had this eerie feeling that you knew that this was an abduction site.
So they truly were worried about her, right? Because she's not in any of the property at this point, but they're finding all of these restraints, this cooler, which I'll talk more about, but the cooler was buried under hay bales. There was like a piece of floor that would come up and the cooler was inside of it and it was like lined with cloth. So, you know,
were they,
it had the,
what?
Were they able to get physical evidence, or had it all been cleaned? I mean, there's
all
blood,
been cleaned.
but there's blood in the...
But he had, there was some DNA that they found later on some of the items. Like there was a pair of panties that they found in there that they feel like he forced. Yeah. So basically their theory was he would force women to put on this lingerie and act out his fantasies. One of the pieces of lingerie had Sierra's DNA on it, but there was no like blood because it was too contaminated. This is a little bit more about how the investigators felt once they saw the barn.
The floor that was recently raked. Our initial view in were hay bales, and as we removed the hay bale, we were looking.
This is talking about the cooler.
Most astonishingly, we found this green crate.
So behind the bales of hay, you find this.
Yes, this is the green crate.
When they opened that crate, they found numerous labeled bags, like Ziploc bags containing items. Things that were labeled were like stockings, tube tops, Daisy Duke shorts, panties. There was duct tape.
So they just go on to talk about like how that just was strange that he had these things. The green crate was basically on top of that piece of wood that when they lifted it up had the cooler in it. So when they asked him, what the fuck's going on here? Like, why do you have these things? Why do you have lingerie and rope and all of this stuff in your barn? First, he said he explained the items were part of a pornography business that he was starting. The lingerie, he said he gives out as gifts to his girlfriends. He was quoted saying, "What's wrong with getting stuff to treat girls? They like that shit. And you know what? If I was going to go out and rape and kill whatever, a chick or whatever, how in the hell would I use that much lingerie? I buy stuff that I think girls would like to have. I mean, I've had a pretty good sex life my whole life, and all the girls are still alive." Dan, the investigator, by the way, like he had this whole attitude. He would call the investigators out by name and stuff, but like just bad shit. Like who would believe this?
Who doesn't have restraints chained to the wall, Dan?
Yeah, I mean that's exactly how he was acting. Dan, what do you mean? Obviously the cooler is for my meat.
Dan.
I just like get buried underground, Dan.
I'm gonna start saying that to people.
I mean, seriously.
I get laid, Dan. Like,
so this is
whenever you're just like incredulous, you just be like, Dan.
This was obviously a bunch of bullshit, a bunch of lies. So I'm gonna play this clip.
He was just full of it.
What do you think he really was using it for?
I think he was wanting a victim that he would abduct to wear some of those clothing for his fantasy. There was a freshly made sandwich sitting in that crate.
A freshly made
sandwich.
Sandwich?
What?
It led us to believe that someone was being held in that area of the barn, because why else would you have a sandwich there?
Everything about that barn screamed to me kidnapping and sexual assault.
So after further searching the barn, they found that piece of plywood that I mentioned there were like holes poked in it. And when they opened it, they found this large white freezer chest that had been lined with carpet. It was wet with a cleaning agent. It had recently been bleached. The officers feared that Sierra had been kept in this cooler, and when they questioned James about it, he said, "Dude, that's my dope stash spot. I grow weed, okay?" And he said that he's like, I grow weed. I don't
carpet.
He's like, I don't buy it. I grow it myself.
Don't you see all the lighting in there in the dungeon?
Right. Again, clearly.
Yeah, man.
What the fuck? You would think if you were this crazy, you would have thought up a better.
I grow my weed
underground,
no sunlight. Duh.
So the police, when he said this. When he said that, the police were like, "But there's no weed in there." He's like, "I smoked it all."
Dan.
I know. They also found what they called kidnap kits with things like zip ties that had been like preset for easy tightening. And the investigators were like, "Dude, honestly,
that's how I grow my weed."
Right.
Dan.
They were just like, they knew that this was the man, right? They had to prove it. Like physically prove that she was there.
Please tell me that was easy. Tell me that was the easy part.
Well, I mean, technically, there hadn't been a crime, right? Like, it's not a crime to own a freezer chest or restraint.
I need something to throw. What the hell?
Right? Like, it's not illegal for a man to own lingerie. Is it weird as fuck to have lingerie and a fresh made sandwich in a green crate in your barn? Yes.
But you said that her DNA was on that shit, though.
But they hadn't discovered that yet. This is their very first walkthrough with a search warrant. And he literally had an answer for everything. So the investigators went on to ask him, "Is she on this property?" And he says, "No, she's not." They asked, "Was she on the property?" And he replies, no, she was not. So then they ask him, was any part of her body on this property? And his response to that question was, not that I know of, no. To which the FBI agent and the officer noted, well, that's a different answer than what you just said. That's not a real answer. To which he didn't have a response for, other than he continued to say he didn't do anything to her.
It's where he grows his weed.
So while they didn't have Sierra, the evidence was enough for probable cause, and he was arrested and charged with her abduction.
Yes.
Unfortunately. Oh, later the same day.
I was like, this is a short episode.
Later the same day, Sierra's body was discovered, tied up, bound and gagged in a shallow grave in another cornfield 2 miles from his home. He was then hit with additional charges, including aggravated murder, kidnapping, and felonious assault. Now, I will say it again later, but I will say right now, just so you can rest a little bit better, she was not sexually assaulted. So this clip that I'm about to play is where the mother, her sister...
But she was dead.
She was dead.
But she wasn't sexually assaulted.
She was not sexually assaulted.
Now,
would he have done that if maybe they had been later? Because she had obviously been at the barn very recently for him to have a fresh made sandwich ready to go. So this clip that I'm about to play, there's only 2 more clips, guys. I'm sorry. So this is where the mother, her sister, and her boyfriend explain what it was like realizing that Sierra had been murdered. I was going to summarize it, but damn, their emotions, they're so important to her story, to see how much she was truly missed, how much she was really loved by them, how much she meant. It's just really heartbreaking.
And then you get the phone call.
Okay, so this is where...
She's been found. I can't imagine the grief that you and your family were feeling at that point.
It was horrible. Everybody was sobbing and crying and falling to their knees. It was painful.
This is her mother.
And it just literally sucks the life right out of you.
I had to do a lot of therapy to get that sound out of my head. The crying, the despair. And it was, we were all out in my mom's front yard, and just, everyone was just broken. It was just, you can't even explain it. It was heartbreaking. Your mind just goes to, did she know how much we loved her? Did she know? I know she did.
It was just one of the worst pains you can ever have. Thinking about what the rest of, my life looks like, because every single plan and every single goal is immediately gone.
So, it was really hard hearing all these people talk about her, because she truly was one of those people. You hear these stories and they say, oh, she lit up a room, and everyone's rolls their eyes. But she was truly one of those people. She had so many friends that cared about her, this family that loved her and cared about her, this boyfriend that was just over the moon for her. And you can just tell by their, all of these years later, because this interview was years later, just how heartbreaking this was for them. So, based on the forensic evidence collected at the abduction site and at his barn, investigators believe that what happened was that James had passed Sierra on his motorcycle and hid in a cornfield further up the road. He then attacked Sierra as she rode by on her bicycle, hitting her in the back of the head with his helmet. They believe that he then left the scene and returned with his truck, abducted her, and took her to his barn where he kept her until she was asphyxiated and then disposed of her body. So there was surveillance footage, and this is really one of the things that sealed the deal that it was him, and one of the biggest piece of evidence. So people at the high school were watching their some footage, and they realized that they had something that they needed to show the police, and it was footage of James driving down the road in his truck and then driving back a few moments later, and it was during the time frame where she would have been abducted. And so his claim was that he was looking for his helmet that he lost when his motorcycle messed up on the side of the road, but that's when the police believe he was picking up her body and taking her to the barn, because obviously you can't.
Why didn't he take all the stuff?
Who knows?
Maybe he couldn't find it.
But the thing about it is so crazy because it was literally right there. It was all in a pile. His screwdriver, the fuses, everything that he admitted to losing and looking for when his motorcycle supposedly messed up was all in a pile right there. And
gosh, that's bonkers.
There was no evidence of sexual assault according to the investigators. Investigators say that each crime scene was linked to James and Sierra through DNA found on items obtained as evidence. So I want to talk to you about why this never should have happened in the first place. Mm-hmm. So before Sierra, there was a woman named Robin Gardner, a woman who was abducted by James under very eerily similar circumstances in 1990, but lived to tell her story. And honestly, it's pretty damn identical. So on July 4th, 1990, Robin was 26 years old, and she was living with her mom in White House, Ohio, just 20 minutes from where Sierra was living. Her mom was at home.
Same time of year, too.
Her mom was at home making food for the neighborhood's annual July 4th get-together. Being there, she just got really bored, and she was deciding that she was going to take a quick bike, a bike ride around and then come back. So she gets on her bike. She is about 1 mile from her home when James passed her in his truck. She noticed when he passed, and she was like, oh, that's unusual to see a car in this area. So she turned around on her bike to go back home. She was like, maybe I should go back home, right? Something about it just made her feel like she should go back home. So she turns her bike around to go home, and this is when she hears a vehicle approaching her from behind. And it was James. He ambushed her. He turned his truck around, and he struck her with his truck and got out of the vehicle, struck her on the head with the hammer, and put her in a chokehold. He then held a screwdriver to her throat and stated, "Get in the vehicle or I'll kill you," and attempted to force her into the vehicle. She said that she remembered thinking, oh my God, this man is going to kill me and dump me in these cornfields. So he began dragging her because she would not get in it. She was fighting back. She did not want to get in this vehicle. She knew if she got in that vehicle, she was as good as dead. But he was able to start dragging her, and he got her into the truck, and he pulled out a pair of handcuffs. He was handcuffing her right arm to the door or whatever. And so she started thinking, I've got to do something. If he gets both of my hands in these handcuffs, I'm done. So with her left hand, she reaches over and grabs the steering wheel and just refuses to let him get anywhere near her hand. And she was just fighting for her life, right? Thrashing around. She was causing such a commotion that a man passing by on a motorcycle stopped. She was able to run out of the vehicle. She escaped and jumped on the back of the motorcycle, no questions asked. And this man took her to her home where the police and ambulance were called. She calls this man her guardian angel. And she said in many, many interviews that if he had not stopped or not helped her, she would not be alive today. And when she returned home, they called the police and ambulance, and they were there very quickly to take her statement. The fucking guy was still at the crime scene when the police got there, and they arrested him. At the time, James was 31. And after this attack, Robin moved back to California, and I want to play this clip of her describing how this abduction changed her life. So I want to preface this by saying that prior to the abduction, she was very outgoing. She loved to be in the outdoors. She was a bird watcher. She was very independent. She liked to do a lot of things alone. So this is her talking about what him abducting her did to her.
After my attack, he was just not going to be a normal person in society. He's going to do this again. I moved back to California where I felt safe because ever since my attack, I can't be alone. I cannot be where someone can't hear me screaming. I can't go bird watching.
It was eerily similar in both attempted abduction of Robin Gardner and the actual abduction of Sierra.
You know, it's very unfortunate that this man ruined so many lives. Had the police...
in so many different ways, too.
Yes.
Not just, the trauma of losing somebody.
And as you heard in the clip, it was eerily similar, right? Like, he didn't even change his MO between all of this. Like, he
really didn't.
It was literally the same.
Why was he at the crime scene?
I mean, the police had time to get to her. Like, the man drove her home.
That's what I'm saying.
The police. Like,
they took a statement,
and he's
still there.
I don't know what to tell you. I mean, thankfully he was there, right? But I don't know why he was still there. So James was ultimately arrested and convicted on abduction charges and only sentenced to 4 to 10 years in prison with the possibility of parole. He served 3 years in prison for the crime before he was released early by his own petition.
Oh, God. I have nothing to throw.
I know. It was very aggravating. So James returned to prison in 2000 when he was convicted of growing marijuana plants and possessing weapons while on disability, which are both felonies at the time.
Oh,
so I guess technically he wasn't lying. He really did grow weed at one point.
He was really growing weed.
But not in the cooler underground in his barn.
Dan.
Yeah. He was released 2 years later in 2002 after once again petitioning for early release and being granted early release. After his second release from prison, he started a small business at his residence and was licensed as a trailer transporter. Robin testified in court at the murder trial for James, who had pleaded guilty to abducting Robin and served 3 years in prison. She said, "I felt very strongly I had to be Sierra's voice. I knew the fear. She wasn't there, and I had to speak for her." James pleaded not guilty to all charges, which I don't understand how, like, you, as a human being, can look around you and think, oh, I didn't do this.
Yeah, this is good.
Like, how do you think people are going to believe your story? You literally had all of your shit at the crime scene that you admitted to before they even told you it was there. You're on camera.
It's like a whole thing. People are doing that now. Don't believe what you've seen or heard. Believe what I say.
You had a crate of lingerie and sandwiches and rope and all of this crap and a cooler underground, and you try to tell people. And you think
it's where I grow my weed and store my presents for all my girlfriends.
And you've literally done this and gone to prison for it once before, exactly the same way, pretty much, except for you used a hammer instead of a helmet.
She's lying, man.
I mean, like, I just don't understand how this man really, really, truly thought.
I'm just out here growing my weed, dude.
He truly acted like that. He really did. Like, he honestly,
oh my gosh,
acted like he had the answers to everything. There was a reason for everything. None of it was illegal. He was just bonkers. So his defense argued that the lack of his DNA on some of the evidence meant that there was a reasonable doubt that he was the one that kidnapped and murdered Sierra.
Sure.
Except for, why was her DNA in your shit? Like, I don't understand. Okay.
Who was that sandwich for, dude?
So the jury found him guilty on all accounts against him. He was sentenced to death. He was sentenced to death and is on death row awaiting execution. Obviously, he's petitioned it several times, but his conviction has been upheld by the Ohio Supreme Court, and his execution date is set for May 20th, 2025. Assuming that he doesn't do another petition, but they've pretty much said, there's no way you're getting out. They found her DNA on stuff on his property. I mean, it's
in other places, not just the underwear. Wow.
Like her hair was in some of the rope. There was evidence, right? God. Like she was clearly here. You clearly did this. You've done this before. You're caught on. So anyways,
it's my porn business.
Which is just
okay. So let's talk to all of your actresses and see what their DNA says.
So in 1996, James was questioned by police over the disappearance of another woman named Claudia Tinsley.
This was in where? 2006.
This was 1996. This was like the first time he was questioned about a woman's disappearance. Sorry, I kind of jumped around, but this is a little bit more of like when he possibly started, and the fact that he has been so suspicious since 1996, and he was still allowed to leave prison,
walk the earth
several times.
Okay.
So in 1996, James was questioned by police over the disappearance of a woman named Claudia Tinsley after her mother reported she last saw her daughter leaving in James's car around 8:15 on September 8th, 1996. Claudia had 3 children of her own, and she lived with her mother. The Toledo police detective at that time was Rick Molnar. He's retired now, but he said that James admitted to picking her up and told police he drove around for about 45 minutes before dropping her off. Couldn't remember where he dropped her off, but he dropped her off. They just hung around in a car for 45 minutes. James denied playing any role in Claudia's disappearance, something he has repeatedly reiterated in prison letters and interviews. He has never been charged with any crime related to this case, as the investigators could not prove that he was lying, and there was no actual evidence he did anything to her, but like he was the last person seen with her, and you drove around for 45 minutes, but you don't remember where you dropped her off.
I mean...
and you know, her mother was like, she wouldn't have like left her kids behind. She had 3 kids. So anyways, he
should never have been out to hurt Sierra ever.
So there were several local women that were murdered or disappeared around the same time as Claudia. All of the victims were sex workers. A serial killer, I don't know which one because I couldn't find it in any of the articles, like they didn't specify, but they did say a serial killer confessed to killing some of them, but others remained unsolved, and they were all in the same area under very weird circumstances. They said they couldn't prove they were related. Sadly, one of Claudia's children, she had 3. One of them was killed in an accidental fire 2 years after the mother went missing. The other 2 children ended up living with her mother, but to this day, Claudia's missing persons case is still open and unsolved. I feel like pretty clear who did it, but that's just me. I'm not a detective. So let's talk about some positives.
You're a cold case cracker.
I am a cold case cracker. I feel like they're all guilty. In the end, I feel like the police that let him go, the judge that let him go, guilty.
The system failed.
The system definitely failed Sierra and Robin, technically.
I mean, yeah, for sure.
So in the aftermath of Sierra's death, her aunt Tara Ice founded Justice for Sierra, which is a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to making the community safer from repeat offenders. The nonprofit also focuses on preventing assaults and abductions via self-defense education. They also campaigned for Sierra's Law, which was signed into law as Senate Bill 231 in the Ohio State Legislature in 2018 per Justice for Sarah. Sierra's law created a violent offender database that law enforcement and residents can use to identify violent felons in their area. Kind of like you can identify sex offenders. This was a database to identify violent felons in the area. Really feel like we should have that everywhere. Her family is trying to campaign for that law to be in every state, but It hasn't passed yet in every state, even though I can't understand why we don't have that. I feel like that's important need to know information when you're moving into a neighborhood. Anyways, so Sierra's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against James, which was settled in 2018, with the family receiving $3.6 million and 3.5 acres of his property, which was the most important thing to them because the ownership meant they could tear the barn down. So the family attorney, Jerome Phillips, was quoted saying, "How would you like to drive by a barn where you believe your daughter was killed on a regular basis because you live in the area? You see that barn all the time. The property is always going to be there, but to see that barn, that remainder from an emotional standpoint was just devastating to the mother." And so they were very happy about, they didn't really care about the money and stuff. They wanted to tear down that barn, which they did. And I
couldn't live by the land because whatever's standing there, I don't know. I mean, like you'd feel like, well, right there on that land. I mean, what about killing fields?
Yeah. I don't know, but they just, I get it. You don't want to see the barn.
I would probably move altogether. I don't know.
I guess they probably wanted to still be close to her, like where she was buried and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But they just didn't want to have to see constant reminders of the barn.
Yeah. I get it. I just I don't know that I could even handle being there.
Yeah.
You know?
But that's my story of Sierra. I did leave out some details about the Barns of Horrors, just because there was a lot going on in that barn.
Like what else?
Just all
we got time.
Torture devices, video recording devices.
So did they find any video?
They did.
Not necessarily of Sierra, because he may not have gotten there, but
they didn't say they did, but I mean it's possible because they did. Again, they fully believe that the reason he had all of this lingerie was they fully believe that Sierra and Robin were not his only victims.
Oh, 100%. That's why I'm saying.
Because this barn was so sophisticated in the torture department, I guess you can say, that there's no way he was just waiting around. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't build this knowing that he was going to take Sierra. Like, he obviously had been using this, right? And so,
like the image in my brain, the fact that I can even imagine it, and I totally blame movies for this. Like the way that I imagine it is probably a lot older than it was. Like I feel like things were rusty, so very not clean, not surgical in any way.
So the barn was it's not like your red barn, stereotypical barn, you know what I mean? It was
and
like
that's what I'm
barn.
That's what I'm picturing
on his property.
Okay.
A lot of overgrown vegetation around it, and it was a huge barn. Like his house.
Oh, so it wasn't nice.
So his house is right, and I'll post a picture of the layout. But his house was here, right? Like just imagine his house, and then over here was the barn. The barn was almost bigger than the house, long. It was a really long barn. But yeah, they found, like I said, rope that had hair in it. They found zip ties. They found.
Please tell me they kept all of this as evidence and have been testing it and trying to identify other possible victims.
And the one officer said the reason they kept the door, because they don't normally keep doors, is that it had been completely spray painted black. He did not want anyone to be able to see into this barn. If you see the cooler, it's just so disturbing because so inside the white cooler there was it was like carpet lined, and the investigator, like the 2020 reporter, asked the cop, he's like, could a body fit in there? Could one fit in there? And he's like, absolutely, and we do believe that she was in there. So, it's hard to believe that she was his first real murder victim based on the things he had going on. And in his truck, he had pre-done zip ties, he had rope, he had those abduction kits. So his truck was just as bad as the barn.
How old was he?
I am not sure. I can try and find out.
I mean, he doesn't look that old.
I think he was 30. Well, at the time that he abducted Robin, he was 31.
So
I do remember that in one of the clips.
He looks like he might be in his 40s.
So in 1990, he was like 31-ish. And then Sierra was 1996, so like 60. So he was like 37, 38 at most when he did this.
She was born in 1996.
Or yeah, I'm sorry, 2016. JK. So he was born in 1950. He was born April 8th, 1959.
I mean, I guess so. What's in his 50s?
If you want to know more about him, his name was James Dean Worley. He was born April 8th, 1959 in Tacoma, Washington.
You don't care about him.
His father was a United States Army officer, and due to his alcoholism and abuse of his wife, divorced the wife when he was young, when James was only 5. His mother remarried, and because she remarried, the person she remarried to is what moved them to Ohio. So he worked as a farmer in Delta, which is where Sierra was at the time. He had a very low grade point average, very low IQ, 1.59 grade point average. Jeez. And started selling weed at 14. So, I mean, he was just a piece of shit his whole life. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not trying to make anyone feel... I'm just saying that from the age of at least 14, he was a piece of shit. So...
and that was, yeah, you're right. Certainly not his first victim or second.
Yeah. So let's see, 2016.
Wow. So
at the time of Sierra's abduction and murder, he would have been 57.
Sierra's so pretty.
Yeah. But yeah, he would have been 57. He was 31, I believe, when Robin was abducted, and 57 when Sierra was murdered.
So sad. Well, I hope her family finds some peace and her boyfriend can find happiness again. I hope he believes he can. I know they're so young, but there's love out there and a life, because I know he made all these plans with Sierra, and I don't, that breaks my heart so much, because like, how do you even think of the future when you thought you had one and now it's gone? It's like, I see that, but
so if just in my story I didn't really describe how insane this man is, I will just tell you that prior to the sentencing, which took 2 days, because he was being charged on there was 19 things he was charged with, 19 different charges. He was convicted of 17 of them. But prior to the sentencing, he made a 45-minute statement described as rambling and disjointed, in which he stated he believed someone else kidnapped and murdered Sierra, leaving the evidence to frame him. People, like the jury, became upset during the statement and left the courtroom after he described Sierra as a beautiful girl. The jury actually recommended capital punishment, which the judge did uphold because that wasn't originally on the table. But the judge said, and I'm quoting here, "If I thought there was a snowball's chance in hell that you were innocent, you'd be looking at a life sentence." But anyways, Worley was sentenced to 11 years in imprisonment for kidnapping, 8 for felony assault, 11 for possessing criminal tools, and 36 months each for tampering with evidence and having weapons under disability. So anyways, he's set to be executed. Originally it was June 3rd, 2009, but it was delayed, so it's set for May of 2025. So all of his appeals have been denied and he has no more. So his attorney did try to blame his childhood, like his father, basically saying he didn't know the difference between right and wrong. So, anywho.
I think you more than I have actually said, it's hard not to like him. And, like when I tell a story about a serial killer or someone awful, and, it's hard not to feel sorry for this guy. He had it really rough, like there's some people you get to a certain point. And you're like, okay, there is some pity. You do have some empathy for this kid. I think on this podcast, there have been times.
Yeah. Yes.
There have been times. I didn't feel that because you didn't give his history. So I didn't have the opportunity to feel that.
I didn't want anyone to feel sorry for him. So I didn't want to talk about it. But since we started talking about it, but he wasn't being abused by his father. His mother was. He was never abused by his father.
And so that's why I think you've said it more than me, because yes, I have given that history and you didn't. So brava. I mean, I that's probably the best thing to do. Yeah. So I don't have that pity for him, because I feel like at a certain point you're making, I don't know. This is true for all of them, because they're all pieces of shit. Yeah. But at a certain point, the statute of limitations runs out. You have to start taking responsibility for yourself as an adult. Mm-hmm. And yes, mental health is one thing, sure. I don't know that a low IQ though. I don't know. Like, he should have maybe then been locked up.
So, I don't know. So the prosecution argued that James had an average upbringing. He didn't have a horrible one, and he definitely knew the difference between right and wrong. And the aggravating factors of his crime outweighed any disorders he was claiming to have, because none of them were proven. And there was actually an interview that I guess I should have talked about between James's sister and a private investigator that was played during the trial.
Okay, the sister who grew up in the same house.
And she mentioned that James had been suspected of killing a prostitute in 2000, but was never charged, as there remains no body, no crime, as well as another woman in the 70s that he described as the love of his life, but who was not identified and could not be found alive. And so he had been accused many times of possibly abducting and murdering women. So this was not like a one-time thing. So I feel like, and if he hadn't been caught, I'm sure he would have kept going. But anyways, like I said, he's on death row, going to be executed, no chance of parole. Yep. And there is a Justice for Sierra website.
Seriously, I'm generally against the death penalty, because I don't think that it's used fairly and properly, and just like in theory, sure, it's probably great. But I'm glad he's dying. That's a terrible thing to say, but I'm like, ugh. If there's anybody who is a danger to society, it is that man. Wow.
I just read this, and I think I should state this, because we talked about the property and the barn being demolished, right. And you thought that, you would move away.
I feel like I would. I just feel like I would.
So, in August of 2020, the Fulton County Sheriff's Department searched his property again. Mind you, he's been in prison all this time. Using excavation equipment with assistance from the FBI, a statement by the sheriff read that the investigation into James was ongoing, and that any evidence found would be collected with assistance from the FBI evidence response team. Didn't give any further comment, but the family did state that this was not related to her case. So that's that. Okay, I'm really done talking. I mean, there's a lot I could keep on going about. Like, they have a memorial scholarship fund for her. They have that nonprofit for her. They have the law. I mean, her family really has turned this tragedy into something positive to help other people who are in the same situation or trying to prevent this situation. So please check out Justice for Sierra or the nonprofit. I'll post about it in the episode post. But yeah.
I don't know how I top that, Ashley.
There's also an annual run called Spirit for Sierra. It's
oh my God, there's so much going on.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I could keep going. The family literally has done so much in her honor to keep her name alive and to help others. So when I say do some research on Sierra, I will put it, because they truly, truly have really worked on making something positive out of this horrible, horrible, horrible situation that I personally don't think I would have been able to do, because I don't know. I think if I had children and one of them was murdered in this horrible way by someone that was practically a neighbor, I would probably lose my mind. I mean, I would lose my mind either way, but especially knowing that they were just right down the road. And as far as her boyfriend, I cannot imagine the guilt. I can't imagine it. So,
I can't either.
Anyways, that's my story.
Well,
at least there was justice, and he didn't kill himself in prison and get the easy way out. Because that is an ending to a lot of our stories. So,
silver lining,
I guess.
Yes. And you know what? What are we here for if not for silver linings?
Right.
We're that feel-good show everybody listens to.
I didn't get to drink a lot during the episode, so now I feel
she's all.
She's trying to forget I even told this story.
It's a little ASMR for everybody.
It's really good.
Yeah,
we're not endorsed by them, but I feel like
we should be. You know, hey, what's up, Kenny Chesney?
Yeah.
Blue Chair Bay Rum.
If anyone knows them, tag us. Just kidding.
Anywho, you know what we say. See something, say something, and you know, we'll be back next week. I guess we should start like a new season though pretty soon. We're like episode 4,000 into the season.
I don't think anyone pays attention to that, but I agree. I'll start changing this season numbers.
Anyway, we love you guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
In a world of crime and mystery, they work for us, researching history. Kat and Ashley with a case to crack, on the move, never looking back. Case files with Kat and Ashley, always funny, sometimes trashy, solving crimes with a beer in hand. Drunk detectives in a crazy land, from the studio to the scene of a crime. Technical issues all the time, with charm and wit, they're quite a sight. And Kevin the goat, he screams all night. He screams all night. But behind the scene there's a hidden ace. The wizard works with skill and grace. He's a mastermind, always on call. The wizard's the one who saves them all, with a clever mind and a handsome face. The wizard works without a trace. It's a sight to behold when he turns this shit show into gold. He turns the shit show